Chapter 5. Some Other Birds Are Taught to Fly. Before the earliest Ruggles could wake and toot his 5-cent tin horn, Mrs. Ruggles was up and stirring about the house, for it was a gala day in the family. Gala day, I should think so. Were not her 9 children invited to a dinner party at the great house, and weren't they going to sit down free and equal with the mightiest in the land? She had been preparing for this grand occasion ever since the receipt of Carol Bird's invitation, which, by the way, had been speedily enshrined in an old photograph frame and hung under the looking-glass in the most prominent place in the kitchen, where it stared the occasional visitor directly in the eye and made him livid with envy. Bird's Nest, December 17, 1880-. Dear Mrs. Ruggles, I am going to have a dinner party on Christmas Day and would like to have all your children come. I want them, every one, please, from Sarah Maud to baby Larry. Mama says dinner will be at 5:30 and the Christmas tree at 7, so you may expect them home at 9 o'clock. Wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I am yours truly, Carol Bird. Breakfast was on the table promptly at 7 o'clock, and there was very little of it, too, for it was an excellent day for short rations, though Mrs. Ruggles heaved a sigh as she reflected that the boys, with their india-rubber stomachs, would be just as hungry the day after the dinner party as if they had never had any at all. As soon as the scanty meal was over, she announced the plan of campaign. Now, Susan, you and Kitty wash up the dishes, and Peter, can't yer spread up the beds so't I can get ter cuttin' out Larry's new suit? I ain't satisfied with his clothes, and I thought in the night of a way to make him a dress out of my old red plaid shawl, kind of Scotch style, you know, with the fringe at the bottom. Eily, you go find the comb and take the snarls out of the fringe. That's a lady. You little young ones clear out from underfoot. Clem, you and Con hop into bed with Larry while I wash your underflannins. 'Twon't take long to dry 'em. Yes, I know it's bothersome, but you can't go into society 'thout takin' some trouble, and anyhow, I couldn't get round to 'em last night. Sarah Maud, I think 'twould be perfectly handsome if you ripped them brass buttons off your uncle's policeman's coat and sewed 'em in a row up the front of your green skirt. Susan, you must iron out yours and Kitty's aprons, and there I come mighty near forgettin' Purie's stockings. I counted the whole lot last night when I was washin' of 'em, and there ain't but 19 anyhow for fixin' 'em, and no 9 pairs mates nohow. And I ain't goin' ter have my children wear odd stockings to a dinner company fetched up as I was. Eily, can't you run out and ask Miss Cullen ter lend me a pair of stockings for Peory, and tell her, if she will, Peory'll give Jim half her candy when she gets home. Won't you, Peory? Peoria was young and greedy, and thought the remedy so out of all proportion to the disease that she set up a deafening howl at the projected bargain, a howl so rebellious and so entirely out of season that her mother started in her direction with flashing eye and uplifted hand, but she let it fall suddenly, saying, "No, I vow I won't lick ye Christmas Day if yer drive me crazy, but speak up smart now, and say whether you'd rather give Jim Cullen half your candy or go bare-legged to the party." The matter being put so plainly, Peoria collected her faculties, dried her tears, and chose the lesser evil. Clem, having hastened the decision by an affectionate wink, that meant he'd go halves with her on his candy. "That's a lady," cried her mother. "Now, you young ones that ain't doin' nothin', play all yer want ter before noontime, for after you get through eatin' at 12 o'clock, me and Sarah Maud's goin' ter give yer sich a washin' and combin' and dressin' as yer never had before, and never will again, likely. And then I'm goin' to set yer down and give yer 2 solid hours trainin' in manners, and 'twon't be no foolin' neither." "All we've got ter do's go eat," grumbled Peter. "Well, that's enough," responded his mother. "There's more'n one way of eatin', let me tell yer, and you've got a heap ter learn about it, Peter Ruggles. Land snakes, I wish you children could see the way I was fetched up to eat. I never took a meal of victuals in the kitchen before I married Ruggles. But you can't keep up that style with 9 young ones in your paw always off ter sea. The big Ruggleses worked so well, and the little Ruggleses kept from underfoot so successfully, that by 1 o'clock 9 complete toilets were laid out in solemn grandeur on the beds. I say complete, but I do not know whether they would be called so in the best society. The law of compensation had been well applied. He that had necktie had no cuffs, she that had sash had no handkerchief, and vice versa. But they all had shoes and a certain amount of clothing, such as it was, the outside layer being in every case quite above criticism. Now, Sarah Maud, said Mrs. Ruggles, her face shining with excitement, everything's read up and can begin. I've got a boiler and a kettle and a pot of hot water. Peter, you go into the back bedroom, and I'll take Susan, Kitty, Peoria, and Cornelius, and Sarah Maud, you take Clem and Eily and Larry, one to a time. Scrub 'em and rinse 'em, or at any rate get furs you can without 'em with 'em, or at any rate get as fur as you can with 'em, and then I'll finish 'em off while you do yourself. Sarah Maud couldn't have scrubbed with any more decision and force if she had been doing floors, and the little Ruggleses bore it bravely, not from natural heroism, but for the joy that was set before them. Not being satisfied, however, with the tone of their complexions, and feeling that the number of the freckles to the square inch was too many to be tolerated in the highest social circles, she wound up operations by applying a little Bristol's brick from the knife-board, which served as the proverbial last straw, from under which the little Ruggleses issued rather red and raw, out of temper. When the clock struck 4, they were all clothed, and most of them in their right minds, ready for those last touches that always take the most time. Kitty's red hair was curled in 34 ringlets, Sarah Maud's was braided in 1 pigtail, and Susan's and Eily's in 2 braids apiece, while Peoria's rested all advances in the shape of hair oils and struck out straight on all sides like that of the Circassian girl of the circus. So Clem said, and he was set into the bedroom for it, too, from whence he was dragged out forgivingly by Peoria herself 5 minutes later. Then, exciting moment, came linen collars for some, and neckties and bows for others. A magnificent green glass breastpin was sewed into Peter's purple necktie, and eureka! The Ruggleses were dressed, and Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. A row of seats was then formed directly through the middle of the kitchen. Of course, there were not quite chairs enough for 10, since the family had rarely wanted to sit down all at once, somebody always being out or in bed or otherwise engaged, but the woodbox and the coal hod finished out the line nicely, and nobody thought of grumbling. The children took their places according to age, Sarah Maud at the head and Larry on the coal hod, and Mrs. Ruggles seated herself in front, surveying them proudly as she wiped the sweat of honest toil from her brow. "Well," she exclaimed, "if I do say so as shouldn't, I never see a cleaner, more stylish mess of children in my life. I do wish Ruggles could look at you for a minute. Larry Ruggles, how many times have I got to tell yer not ter keep pullin' at your sash? Haven't I told yer if it comes untied, your waist in skirt'll part company in the middle, and then where'll yer be? Now look at me in the eye, all of yer. I've often told yer what kind of family the McGrills was. I've got reason to be proud. Goodness knows, your uncle is on the police force of New York City. You can take up the paper most any day and see his name printed right out, James McGrill, and I can't have my children fetched up common like some folks. When they go out, they've got to have clothes and learn to act decent. Now I want to see how you're going to behave when you get there tonight. 'Tain't so awful easy as you think 'tis. Let's start at the beginning. and act out the whole business. Pile into the bedroom there, every last one of you, and show me how you're going to go into the parlor. This'll be the parlor, and I'll be Miss Bird." The youngsters hustled into the next room in high glee, and Mrs. Ruggles drew herself up in the chair with an infinitely haughty and purse-proud expression that much better suited a descendant of the McGrills than modest Mrs. Bird. The bedroom was small, and there presently ensued such a clatter that you would have thought a herd of wild cattle had broken loose. The door opened, and they straggled in, all the younger ones giggling, with Sarah Maud at the head, looking as if she had been caught in the act of stealing sheep, while Larry, being last in line, seemed to think the door a sort of gate of heaven which would be shut in his face if he didn't get there in time. Accordingly, he struggled ahead of his elders and disgraced himself by tumbling in head foremost. Mrs. Ruggles looked severe. "There, I knew you'd do it in some sich fool way. Now go in there and try it over again. Every last one of you. And if Larry can't come in on 2 legs, he can stay to home. Do you hear?" The matter began to assume a graver aspect. The little Ruggleses stopped giggling and backed into the bedroom, issuing presently, with lockstep, Indian file, a scared and hunted expression on every countenance. "No, no, no!" cried Mrs. Ruggles in despair. "That's worse yet. You look for all the world like a gang of prisoners. There ain't no style to that. Spread out more, can't yer, and act kind of careless like. Nobody's going to kill you. That ain't what a dinner party is." The third time brought deserved success, and now the pupils took their seats in the row. "Now you know," said Mrs. Ruggles impressively, "there ain't enough decent hats to go around, and if there was, I don't know's I'd let yer wear 'em, for the boys would never think to take 'em off when they got inside, for they never do. But anyhow, there ain't enough good ones. Now look me in the eye. You're only going just round the corner. You needn't wear no hats, none of you. And when you get into the parlor, and they ask yer to lay off your hats, Sarah Maud must speak up and say it was such a pleasant evening and such a short walk that you left your hats at home. Now can you remember?" All the little Ruggleses shouted, "Yes, marm," in chorus. "What have you got to do with it?" demanded their mother. "Did I tell you to say it? Weren't I talking to Sarah Maud?" The little Ruggleses hung their diminished heads. "Yes, marm," they piped more discreetly. "Now, we won't leave nothing to chance. Get up, all of you, and try it. Speak up, Sarah Maud." Sarah Maud's tongue clove to the roof of her mouth. "Quick!" Ma thought. "It was such a pleasant hat that we'd better leave our short walk to home," recited Sarah Maud in an agony of mental effort. This was too much for the boys. An earthquake of suppressed giggles swept all along the line. "Oh, whatever shall I do with yer?" moaned the unhappy mother. "I suppose I've got to learn it to yer." Which she did, word for word, until Sarah Maud thought she could stand on her head and say it backwards. "Now, Cornelius, what are you going to say to make yourself good company?" "Do? Me? Dunno," said Cornelius, turning pale with unexpected responsibility. "Well, you ain't going to set there like a bump on a log without saying a word to pay for your victuals, air ya? Ask Miss Bird how she's feeling this evening, or if Mr. Bird's having a busy season, or how this kind of weather agrees with him, or something like that. Now we'll make believe we've got ter the dinner. That won't be so hard, 'cause you'll have something to do. It's awful bothersome to stand round and act stylish. If they have napkins, Sarah Maud, down to Peary, may put 'em in their laps, and the rest of you can tuck 'em in your necks. Don't eat with your fingers. Don't grab no victuals off one another's plates. Don't reach out for nothing, but wait till you're asked. And if you never get asked, don't get up and grab it. Don't spill nothing on the tablecloth, or like's not Miss Bird'll send you away from the table, and I hope she will if you do. Susan, keep your handkerchief in your lap where Peory can borrow it, if she needs it, and I hope she'll know when she does need it, though I don't expect it. Now we'll try a few things to see how they'll go. Mr. Clement, do you eat cranberry sarce? Bet your life, cried Clem, who in the excitement of the moment had not taken in the idea exactly and had mistaken this for an ordinary bosom-of-the-family question. Clement McGrill, Ruggles, do you mean to tell me that you'd say, to a dinner party? I'll give you one more chance. Mr. Clement, will you take some of the cranberry? Yes, marm, thank you kindly. If you happen to have any handy. Very good indeed. But they won't give yer 2 tries tonight. You just remember that. Miss Peory, do you speak for white or dark meat? I ain't particular as to color. Anything that nobody else wants will suit me, answered Peory with her best air. First rate. Nobody could speak more genteel than that. Miss Kitty, will you have hard or soft sarce with your pudding? Hard or soft? Oh, a little of both, if you please, and I'm much obliged, said Kitty, bowing with decided ease and grace, at which all the other Ruggleses pointed the finger of shame at her, and Peter grunted expressively, that their meaning might not be mistaken. You just stop your gruntin', Peter Ruggles. That warn't greedy. That was all right. I wish I could get it into your heads that it ain't so much what you say as the way you say it. And don't keep staring cross-eyed at your necktie pin, or I'll take it out and sew it on to Clem or Cornelius. Sarah Maud'll keep her eye on it, and if it turns broken side out, she'll tell you. Gracious, I shouldn't think you'd ever seen nor worn no jewelry in your life. Eily, you and Larry, too little to train, so you just look at the rest and do's they do. And the Lord have mercy on ye and help ye to act decent. Now, is there anything more you'd like to practice? If you tell me one more thing, I can't set up and eat, said Peter gloomily. I'm so crammed full of manners, now I'm ready to burst, without no dinner at all. Me too, chimed in Cornelius. Well, I'm sorry for you both, rejoined Mrs. Ruggles sarcastically. If the mount of manners you've got on hand now troubles you, you're dreadful easy hurt. Now, Sarah Maud, after dinner, about once in so often, you must get up and say, I guess we'd better be going, and if they say, oh no, set a while longer, you can set, but if they don't say nothing, you've got to get up and go. Now have yer got that into your head, about once in so often? Could any words in the language be fraught with more terrible and wearing uncertainty? Well, answered Sarah Maud more mournfully, seems as if this whole dinner party set right square on top of me. Maybe I could manage my own manners, but to manage 9 manners is worse than staying home. Oh, don't fret, said her mother, good-naturedly, now that the lesson was over. I guess you'll get along. I wouldn't mind if folks would only say, oh, children will be children, but they won't. They'll say, land of goodness, who fetched them children up? It's 5:15, and you can go now. Remember about the hats. Don't all talk ter once. Susan, lend your handkerchief to Peory. Peter, don't keep screwing your scarf pin. Cornelius, hold your head up straight. Sarah Maud, don't take your eyes off of Larry. And Larry, you keep hold to Sarah Maud and do just as she says, and whatever you do, all of you never forget for 1 second that your mother was a McGrill.